So, the Duke of Kent has reportedly handed over one of the most important private royal jewelry collections to Catherine, Princess of Wales, on a permanent basis. And what makes this move so interesting is that the transfer appears to have gone around almost everyone else in the royal family, even the king and queen. The legal transfer was completed this morning at Windsor Castle, and the timing is impossible to ignore because it falls on Princess Charlotte's 11th birthday and comes after the death of the Duchess of Kent in September 2025. Since losing his wife, the 90-year-old Duke has reportedly been deeply focused on what will happen to his estate and how his most meaningful possessions should be preserved. And what he chose to do with these sapphires says a lot about who he believes can protect the monarchy's future. But honestly, the most revealing part is not only who received them, it is who did not. Before we get deeper into this, if you follow royal power shifts and the quiet behind-the-scenes decisions that shape the future of the monarchy. So, here's what reportedly took place this morning. At 9:45. Legal representatives connected to the Kent estate arrived at Windsor Castle to complete the transfer of what is known as the Cambridge Sapphire Parure. That is the formal name for a coordinated set of jewelry. And this particular set has remained connected to the Kent family for more than 90 years. The collection includes a tiara, a necklace, several brooches, and earrings, though the original full set was once larger. Some pieces were sold at Christie's in the 1970s when the family was under financial pressure, and that detail is actually very important to understanding why this handover matters now. The Duke has personally seen what happens when historic royal jewelry ends up with people who cannot afford to keep it intact. He did not want the same thing to happen again. That memory stayed with him for decades, and it clearly influenced how he handled the remaining pieces. What makes this transfer so different from the usual movement of tiaras and jewels between royal households is this: these sapphires are not crown jewels. They are not held for the nation. They are private property. That means they can be sold, inherited, gifted, or transferred according to the owner's wishes. The king cannot legally demand that they be placed into the royal collection. He cannot control where they go. And that independence is exactly what allowed the Duke to make this decision without needing permission from anyone. The stones originally trace back to Princess Augusta, the Duchess of Cambridge, in the early 19th century. They later passed to Queen Mary, who gifted them to the Duke's mother, Princess Marina, in 1934. Because the sapphires were given as a personal gift, they stayed private. They were never absorbed into the central royal vault system controlled by the monarch. And that distinction matters more than anything else. It means the Duke was acting as a private owner deciding the future of his own property, not as a royal official managing assets of the state. The Duke's decision to give the collection to Catherine instead of his own direct heirs reveals how he sees the future of the institution. His sons, George, Earl of St. Andrews, and Lord Nicholas Windsor, are not working royals. They have chosen different paths and live outside the daily public work of the monarchy. And historically, when major jewelry collections pass to family members without royal duties, those pieces can eventually be sold to pay taxes or private expenses. The Duke already watched parts of the original Cambridge set disappear decades ago. He was reportedly not prepared to let the remaining treasures face the same fate. According to internal palace reports, he said during a legal briefing last month that the stones needed to remain with the woman who represents the future of the monarchy instead of being divided among private citizens who would not wear them at state occasions. That is an extremely direct assessment of his own family's position, and it does not seem to come from anger. It seems to come from a man who has spent more than 80 years serving the monarchy and who views these jewels as instruments of public duty, not just beautiful possessions locked away in a safe. He understands that jewelry at this level has a diplomatic role. It has symbolic weight. And that meaning only becomes alive when the pieces are worn in service of the crown. This is where the Duke of Kent's personal standing becomes very important. He is one of only 2 members of the royal family who hold the rank of Field Marshal in the British Army. The other is the king himself. He inherited his dukedom when he was only 6 years old after his father died in a wartime aircraft crash in 1942. Since then, he has carried out royal duties with quiet discipline for 8 decades. He is the longest-serving duke in British history. So, when someone with that kind of royal record makes a decision about his private estate, people notice. He reportedly told estate executives that his rank and years of service were not decorative titles. They were tools he could use to make sure the pieces his mother loved remained inside the working heart of the family. He reportedly made it clear that he would not allow these jewels to be scattered. That is not just emotional language. That is a man using every ounce of institutional authority he has to protect a legacy. And he did it with the same quiet control and precision that defined his military and ceremonial life. The timing of all of this goes back to the weeks after the Duchess of Kent's funeral on September 16, 2025. During that period, observers noted several private meetings between the Duke and senior palace advisors. And apparently that was when the early structure of this transfer began to form. He was reportedly in a reflective stage of life, looking at what remained of his work, his marriage, and his family's history. And he seems to have decided that protecting the Kent legacy would become his final major mission. His estate planning was handled with almost military-level precision, and that planning appears to have blocked any possible attempt to place these sapphires under the Queen Consort's management. By using the legal protections that apply to private royal estates, the Duke ensured that his choice would be final and legally secure. In the Windsor world, possession is not simply a technical detail. Possession is power. And the Duke understood that better than almost anyone alive. Now, many people might assume Catherine and the Duke of Kent only had a distant royal connection. Maybe a few formal greetings, balcony appearances, and polite public moments. But that assumption would be wrong. If you look at the official record from September 2020, Catherine, then the Duchess of Cambridge, was appointed joint president of the Scout Association alongside the Duke. This was not just a symbolic title. The Duke had held that presidency since 1975. Bringing Catherine in beside him was a carefully managed transition. Over the next 6 years, he was able to see her work closely. He saw how she handled responsibility. He saw how she respected old traditions, and he saw how she showed up for the steady, unglamorous service that had defined his own royal career. The Duke is known as a traditionalist who values duty above almost everything. And in Catherine, he reportedly saw someone with the same understanding. Someone who could carry royal history without chasing the spotlight for personal attention. He saw someone who understood that service is not about applause. It is about appearing again and again. Even when no one is watching closely, there is also a historical and linguistic connection here that does not feel accidental. These jewels are called the Cambridge Sapphires. For more than a decade, Catherine herself carried the title Duchess of Cambridge. To the Duke, the idea of these specific stones returning to a Duchess of Cambridge, who actually serves the monarchy, may have felt like a kind of restoration, a return to the place they were always meant to be. His sons chose their own lives. George married a Roman Catholic. Nicholas converted to Catholicism, and while those are personal choices they had every right to make, those choices historically complicated their place within the traditional Anglican structure of the monarchy. But more importantly, they are private citizens. They do not represent the king at state banquets. They do not receive foreign leaders on behalf of the crown. They do not operate at the center of royal ceremonial life. The Duke reportedly told advisors that he respected the paths his sons had chosen. But these sapphires required a public role. They needed to be seen at the heart of national ceremonies, not hidden in a private safe or sold to settle estate costs. In his view, Catherine was the only person who could give the jewels a continuing purpose. She was the only one who could allow them to keep doing what they were always meant to do, appear on the world stage as symbols of continuity, elegance, and duty. That is a remarkable decision to make for someone who is not your own child. But it also explains why this transfer creates such an interesting shift between the two most senior royal women right now. Queen Camilla as Queen Consort naturally has access to many official crown jewels and to several important pieces associated with the late Queen Elizabeth. Her access to the royal collection is extraordinary, but those pieces are held for the institution. They are not personally hers in the way these sapphires now belong to Catherine. The Duke's collection follows a completely different legal path. Because these jewels are private wealth, they bypass the usual royal order entirely the Duke used. His legal right to look beyond the current royal hierarchy and place his treasures directly into the hands of the next generation. That creates a powerful contrast. Camilla represents the present reign. She stands beside King Charles during a period of transition, but Catherine is increasingly being seen as the future, and now she is building a personal archive of royal history that belongs to her alone. This may not be a personal competition, but structurally, it changes the balance of influence inside the family. Royal expert Katie Nicholl has often spoken about the strict hierarchy around the late Queen's jewelry. Normally, that hierarchy would mean Camilla receives the first opportunity to use major pieces. But the Duke of Kent's private property does not answer to that hierarchy. The feeling among some palace observers is simple. The Queen has the crown, but the Princess has the momentum. Every time Catherine wears a historic piece, she strengthens her connection with the public. She also reinforces her role as the family's strongest ambassador for royal heritage. The Duke's decision guarantees that these sapphires will not disappear into the wider royal collection and become just another item in the vault. They will remain distinct. They will remain attached to Catherine, and they will remain associated with the woman he apparently believes will define the monarchy for decades. That kind of certainty is rare in royal circles, where vague compromises usually rule the day. And the moment that appears to have strengthened the Duke's decision was Catherine's appearance on the Time 100 health list in May 2025 for a 90-year-old man deciding who should carry a historic family legacy. That recognition was more than just a public honor. It was evidence of something he needed to see. Across 2024 and early 2025, the world watched Catherine move through cancer treatment and recovery. Her health battle and return to public life transformed her image. She was no longer simply a senior royal. She became a global symbol of strength, grace, and resilience. By the beginning of 2026, independent polling reportedly showed her approval rating had reached around 90%. In practical terms, she had become one of the most valuable figures in the House of Windsor. For the Duke, who had spent 8 decades watching royal reputations rise and fall, that public support mattered deeply. His thinking was reportedly that jewelry of this importance should belong to the person who holds the public's trust. He did not see the sapphires as fashion pieces. He saw them as symbols of the monarchy's relationship with the people it serves. And Catherine, through the way she carried herself under enormous pressure, had become that connection in human form. He reportedly told executives during a private legal briefing last winter that tradition is not simply about preserving the past. It is about making sure precious things are held by those who can inspire the next generation, he allegedly said. Catherine had shown strength beyond titles and had earned the right to wear the stones. That does not sound like someone giving a casual present. That sounds like someone making a deliberate investment in the future of the institution. And that decision seemed to reach a symbolic peak on April 21, 2026. During a ceremony marking the birthday of the late Queen Elizabeth, the Duke made what many observers believe may have been his final major public appearance. He was seen standing in quiet conversation with Catherine. Royal watchers have since viewed that moment as a passing of the torch. An elderly field marshal and the future Queen recognizing something in each other. The photographs from that day seem to show a quiet understanding between them. The kind of understanding that does not need to be explained out loud. And that brings us to today, May 2nd, 2026, Princess Charlotte's 11th birthday. And this is where the bigger plan becomes visible. Catherine has reportedly been carefully building a private jewelry archive intended one day for Charlotte, a collection that stands apart from the official state vaults. This morning, the confirmation of the transfer arrived in a very visible way. Catherine was reportedly seen at a private family gathering at Windsor, wearing the diamond and sapphire girandole earrings from the original Cambridge set. Those earrings were once associated with Princess Marina and were thought by many to have disappeared from public use. Their reappearance now sends a clear message. The Duke of Kent's jewels have successfully moved into the next generation. This is no longer just speculation. It is being presented as a visible fact, and the decision to reveal them on Charlotte's birthday does not feel accidental. It feels like a carefully chosen signal that the future line of these treasures now runs from mother to daughter. What this moment represents is the closing of the Kent family's era as a major, independent force in royal jewelry collecting. And it marks the beginning of a more consolidated future under William and Catherine. By securing these Romanov descended sapphires, the Princess of Wales has ensured that some of the most important private pieces of family history remain close to the direct line of the throne. It is a calculated act of preservation. A close family associate reportedly said, "Catherine understands that her daughter's future status will be shaped partly by the symbols of the past. By securing the Kent legacy now, she is building a foundation for Charlotte that cannot easily be disturbed by palace politics." That phrase matters, cannot be touched, because these are private assets. They are not controlled by whoever has access to the royal collection at any given time. They belong to Catherine. And one day, they may belong to Charlotte, and there is very little anyone in the palace can do about that. That kind of certainty is priceless in a family where access to the royal vault can change after one private conversation. At 90 years old, the Duke of Kent appears to have completed what he sees as his final duty. He navigated inheritance issues, royal protocol, private estate law, and family expectations to place his family's most treasured possessions where he believed they would be safest. The handover is a statement of trust in Catherine's strength and her role as one of the foundations of the modern monarchy. He did not choose the crown itself. He did not choose the central royal vault. He chose a person, and he chose her after 6 years of working beside her, watching how she handled pressure, watching how she respected duty, and then watching her emerge from a health crisis with even stronger public support. That level of judgment is rare. And at 90, it reflects a lifetime of learning how to read character. The Duke trusted his own instincts over protocol, expectation, and hierarchy. And he acted on that judgment. The image of those sapphires at Windsor today may be the strongest evidence of what has happened. They represent a bridge between the 19th century world of Queen Mary and the modern reality of a monarchy that is becoming smaller, sharper, and more focused. By placing these treasures with Catherine, the Duke has helped ensure they will continue to appear at major national moments rather than disappear into a private estate or be broken apart for their materials. He had seen too many royal treasures vanish into private hands. He was not going to allow that to happen again while he still had the authority to prevent it. By acting now, while he still had both the legal capacity and the moral authority to direct his estate, he removed future uncertainty. The sapphires are now where he wanted them to be, and that chapter appears to be closed. When you look at the full picture, the British monarchy is often described through laws, battles, crowns, and ceremonies, but its survival is also carried through physical objects. Gold, diamonds, sapphires, jewels passed from one generation to another. History is not only written in documents. Sometimes it is carried in Romanov diamonds and Cambridge sapphires worn by the woman who will one day become Queen. Catherine has not simply received a jewelry collection. She has secured a piece of the future, and she has done it with the blessing of the one man whose private wealth, royal rank, and lifetime of service gave him the power to make that decision. Without asking anyone's permission, the Duke of Kent spent 80 years serving an institution, known for moving slowly and carefully, but in what may be one of his final defining acts, he moved with complete decisiveness. He looked at the family tree. He looked at who actually serves. He looked at who the public trusts, and then he placed his legacy in the hands of the person he believes can carry it forward. That is not just a gift, that is a judgment. And it is a judgment that could echo through every state banquet, every diplomatic reception, and every historic royal photograph for the next half-century.